we need to fund the Department of Homeland Security. The Democrats need to stop holding national security hostage for partisan political objectives. What they're doing is wrong and irresponsible. Number two, when it comes to amnesty, the president's executive amnesty is wrong, it's illegal, and it's unconstitutional.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz telling CNN that Senate Democrats need to stop holding our national security hostage. Welcome back for the final hour of America's Forum with Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth. And Miranda, in about a week, February 18th, to put a precise point on it, the president's amnesty order goes into full effect, granting over 4 million illegal aliens protection from deportation.
However, a week after the order goes into effect, funding for the Department of Homeland Security will run out, causing roughly 30,000 agency employees to be furloughed.
Joining us now for an in-depth analysis, we are pleased to call on a great friend of this program, David Horowitz. He's the author of the Black Book of the American Left, Volume 3, The Great Betrayal. He also heads the David Horowitz Freedom Center. David, thanks so much for your time and welcome back to America's Forum.
Good morning.
So, David, among conservative communicators, is Ted Cruz perhaps the most effective in terms of spelling out the real stakes of this national debate?
Yeah, but I think he's falling short himself. Look, the security of this country is under open attack by the Democrats and the Obama administration. Why do you think we have no borders? It's because of the Democrats. Why aren't we fighting ISIS in the Middle East? Why have we no ground troops? It's because of the Democrats. Why have we surrendered Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Libya to terrorists? That's because of the Democrats. This is an active campaign to undermine America's power because these people are driven by the view that America's the problem in the world. If we just get out of the world, everything will be all right. And that is going to cost a lot of American lives in the near future.
Well, mindful of that, what should happen in the short term over this amnesty plan that's clearly unconstitutional and the funding for the Department of Homeland Security?
I think, look, there I'm 100% with Cruz. I mean, I think he's doing a wonderful job in a very, very difficult situation because Republicans still think that they have opponents they can compromise with. You can't compromise with the Democrats if they're out to destroy this country's power and influence and security, which is what they are. I mean, of course, they don't, in their own minds, they don't think that's what they're doing. They think they're being morally superior to everybody else in the world by showing that we have such high standards that no rational human being would follow them. The hour is very, very late. And if Republicans don't start defunding this administration and throwing obstruction in their path, we won't have a country to defend.
David, we've been talking about immigration. We want to switch gears now and talk about that immigrant complaint line. We had Senator Ron Johnson on yesterday. We want you to listen to what he had to say and then get your reaction on the back end.
We heard it repeatedly of Border Patrol agents going down. You know, these women with their children will set a campfire, you know, to be caught. And when they get there, the women complain about what took you so long. I've been sitting here for an hour or 3 hours. So come on up to the bus. No, bring the bus down to us. So there's an expectation created by our own government policies that, again, if you get into America, you're going to be treated humanely, which of course we will do. But you'll also be allowed to stay. So we have got to review those policies and understand that it's our own government policies that are creating an awful lot of the incentive.
So your reaction to this new hotline and what you just heard?
Yeah, we let all aggressors of color get to be victims, don't they? I mean, it's not just the immigration issue, it's the race issue too. We had a lynch mob in Ferguson out there for months that spread then to the rest of the country. And they were called protesters. And it's like there was some hurt inflicted on them. What is the hurt about taking down a criminal like Michael Brown, who's assaulting a police officer? So the left has successfully reversed, changed the equation. so that if you're here illegally, somehow we should be sympathetic to you, and somehow you have rights, and somehow you want to hear your complaints. This is suicidal, and it just has to change. Ron Johnson is right. We had to change those policies.
David Horowitz, it sounds as if you're
legislation to do so.
You're talking about the pitfalls of the lexicon of the politically correct. And I want you to stick around, because when we come back, we'll talk about what's going on in terms of political correct terms at the University of Michigan. Stay with us. With Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth back on America's Forum. Miranda, it's interesting how different movements on campus in history change. For example, in the early 60s, at the University of California, Berkeley, there was the famed free speech movement. Right. But now, in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan, school officials there spent $16,000 on a campaign to warn students to watch what they say. Phrases like crazy, insane, illegal alien, or I want to die are apparently now unacceptable to be used. A guy who, I don't know if you would define him in his youth as a campus radical, but he was a leftist radical, and then he had a conversion to conservatism. David Horowitz of the David Horowitz Freedom Center rejoins us. David, you have always spoken about the importance of words. Your take on this new speech code in Ann Arbor?
Well, the left was there. I was a campus radical in the 60s, and the left never was about free speech. They just used free speech as a weapon for themselves. What they were interested in those demonstrations in the 60s was the ability to recruit politically on campus, and they won that battle. What's going on at the University of Michigan, it should be a wake-up call to conservatives. I mean, this isn't cute. This attempt to regulate speech is because so-called progressives, so-called liberals, and you should never use the term liberal to describe them, are actually totalitarians. They know what's good for the rest of us, and they're going to force us to do what's good for us. So they're outlawing these phrases. Another one is you can't say the test raped me. On the other hand, if you move over to California, where these same leftist totalitarians are on the march, in order to have sex with someone from the opposite or same sex, you have to get a consent form in advance. You can't just kind of slip into it. Otherwise, it's rape. But you can't be raped by a test. The idea is to outlaw. You can't use the word illegal alien. Well, of course not. That's who they are. They're illegal and they're aliens. They're foreigners who came here illegally. But if we outlaw the term and call them undocumented workers, well, of course we want to document workers. Why shouldn't these people have documentation? So they win the war that way. The President of the United States is a racist. He's got the chief lynch mob leader in the country and chief racist, Al Sharpton, as his race relations advisor. He's been 83 times to the White House. That's 83 times more than Peter King, who's the head of the Subcommittee on Terrorism or Homeland Security, whichever it is, has been invited to the White House. Yet nobody, and it's clear from Obama's backing these lynch mobs who wanted to they did destroy the career of Officer Wilson, but wanted to put him in jail too for a crime that he didn't commit. When we talk their language, we give them victories. Let me say this isn't the worst thing. This Michigan, at the University of California this week, the student government for the whole university, that's 233,000 students, passed a resolution to economically divest university resources from the United States because we're war criminals. These people are anti-American radicals, and they're they're communists. That's basically what nobody can use
David, I want
that
to
term.
ask you, though, would you agree that words matter? We were just looking at images of the president. A lot of Republicans have been very critical of the president recently for not calling these terrorist acts by ISIS Islamic terrorism.
Well, and worse than that, or equal to that, he said that the killings of the Jews, the targeted Jews, were random acts of folks who just happened to be in the supermarket. It's very different, though. This is not criminalizing the president's speech. It's looking at that speech to show where his true allegiances lie, and they don't lie with this country. He doesn't identify with Christians. He doesn't identify with Jews. He doesn't identify with America. That is what these statements reveal, and why conservatives are pointing them out.
And yet,
unfortunately, conservative language has not had the courage to call things by their right names yet. We need to be on the offensive, not just defending ourselves.
and as you wrote years ago when I was serving in Congress, I believe it was The Art of the Political War. We should remind folks that the name of your new book is The Black Book of the American Left, Volume 3, The Great Betrayal. David Horowitz, as always, we appreciate your perspective and your clear speech, and we thank you very much for your time here on America's Forum. Don't you go away. There's a lot more ahead on this edition of America's Forum from Newsmax TV.